The air in the auditorium tastes like dust and anticipation. It's thick, heavy, clinging to the back of my throat. The red velvet seats feel prickly under my hands, worn smooth in places by 1,000 anonymous bottoms. The murmur of voices is a low, restless tide, punctuated by the squeak of a shoe or the rustle of a program. I sit here, smiling a rigid, aching smile, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles are white. My niece, Sarah, is backstage, a bundle of nerves and tulle, about to perform. She's the only reason I'm here. The only reason I'm enduring this. The man next to me, my husband, Mark, shifts in his seat. I can feel the tension radiating off him, a cold, unpleasant heat. Not performance nerves, no. Something else. Something calculated. He glances at the woman on his other side. Her name is Claire. She is radiant, perfectly coiffed, perfectly dressed. A predator in pearls. She smiles back at him, a slow, possessive smile that twists something deep inside me. I know what's coming. I've known for weeks. But knowing and experiencing are two different hells. The lights dim. A spotlight cuts through the darkness, hitting the stage director standing center stage. He begins to speak, his voice amplified, echoing slightly in the hushed space. He's thanking sponsors, acknowledging contributors. I stare straight ahead, my gaze fixed on the empty stage, seeing nothing but the replay of the last few months, the crumbling facade of my life. Mark leans closer to Claire, whispers something in her ear. She giggles. A tiny, sharp sound that feels like a pinprick in my heart. I force myself to breathe. In, out. The air is still dusty. The spotlight moves. If this story hits close to home, or if you've ever felt lost in the darkness, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me share more of these stories, more of these moments of finding light in the dark. Life, before the dust settled and revealed the rot, was comfortable, predictable. Mark and I built something together. A house with a garden I poured my heart into, a life woven from shared jokes, quiet evenings, future plans sketched in the margins of our calendars. We weren't the couple who finished each other's sentences, but we understood the unspoken language of shared history. Or so I thought. My basic desire was simple: stability, a partner to navigate the currents of life with a quiet certainty that I wasn't facing the world alone. I desired depth, connection that went beyond the superficial. I found comfort in routine, in the mundane rhythm of two lives intertwined. Weekends spent at home, reading side by side. Dinners where we talked about our days, or sometimes sat in comfortable silence. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was ours. It felt solid, like bedrock. I trusted it. I trusted him. That trust was the foundation, invisible but essential. It's funny, isn't it? You don't realize how much you rely on something until it's gone and the whole structure collapses. It wasn't a sudden crack. It was a slow erosion, like water wearing away stone. Small things at first. Late nights at the office that stretched longer and longer. A new phone he was suddenly protective of. A cologne I didn't recognize. He started dressing differently, sharper. He seemed happier? Restless? I couldn't place it. My questions were met with vague answers, irritation. He was stressed, he said. Work was demanding. I accepted it. I wanted to. It was easier than digging deeper, easier than confronting the unease that had begun to coil in my gut. I made excuses for him in my head, built elaborate justifications for his distance. He needed space. He was going through something. I just needed to be patient, supportive, be the good wife, the quiet, understanding wife, the one who didn't rock the boat. The inciting incident wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was silent, cold, and utterly final. A forgotten iPad, logged into his private email. Curiosity, a small, treacherous snake, whispered in my ear. I rationalized it as concern. Was he in trouble? Financial? Legal? I clicked. The first email was innocuous. The second, also work-related. The third, my breath hitched. It was a chain between him and Claire. Flirting casual at first, then bolder. Plans for lunches that turned into evenings. Pet names. Then the photos. Not explicit, but undeniably intimate. A weekend getaway booked under false names. My world didn't just shake, it imploded. The bedrock wasn't bedrock at all. It was a stage set, cleverly painted to look solid. It was all fake. The comfortable life, the shared history, the trust a lie. The silence in the house that day was deafening. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, the glowing screen a window into a reality I couldn't comprehend. The air grew thin. I felt like I was drowning, standing in my own living room. This wasn't just an affair. This was a parallel life he had built, brick by secret brick, right beside mine. A life he seemed to cherish, while ours withered in the shadows. The betrayal was a physical blow, leaving me winded and aching. The early struggles were a blur of pain and disbelief. Confrontation? There was little point. The evidence was undeniable. But I tried. I held up the iPad, my hand trembling. He didn't deny it, not really. He twisted, he minimized, he blamed. My lack of attention. My focus on the garden instead of him. My supposed frigidity. He painted me as the villain in the story he had written. The gaslighting was suffocating. He made me question my sanity, my memory, my worth. He spoke with a chilling calmness, as if explaining a simple oversight, not the demolition of our marriage. He told me I was overreacting, that it didn't mean anything, that Claire was just a friend, a colleague. With the photos staring at us from the screen, the audacity was breathtaking. I wanted to rage, to break things, to shatter the composure he wore like armor. But I couldn't. I was frozen in the headlights of his casual cruelty. Days bled into weeks. He continued the affair, less secretive now, bolder. He would come home late, smelling of her perfume, a scent I now associated with nausea. He moved out eventually, claiming he needed space to think, space to live openly with her was more like it. The house felt vast and empty without him, yet paradoxically, lighter without the weight of his deceit. My attempts to navigate this new reality were clumsy, painful. Friends offered sympathy, advice. Family whispered. I felt exposed, vulnerable. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, going to work, buying groceries, watering the garden. But everything felt muted, seen through a thick, distorting glass. The world outside the house continued, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in mine. The simplest tasks felt monumental. Getting out of bed, fixing a meal for one, answering the inevitable questions with a forced smile. I was adrift, the familiar shore of my old life receding, the new, terrifying landscape shrouded in fog. The crisis deepened. It wasn't enough that he had broken my heart and our vows. He seemed determined to break me entirely. The legal battles began, ugly and drawn out. He fought over every penny, every shared possession. He twisted facts, lied under oath. His lawyer was aggressive, ruthless, painting me as unreasonable, demanding, hysterical. Claire was often there, a silent, watchful presence beside him in the courtroom waiting area, her presence a constant, deliberate provocation. She looked smug, like she had won, like I was a minor inconvenience being swept away. They acted like a unit, a solid, impenetrable force against my crumbling defenses. My finances were stretched thin. The legal fees mounted. The stress was relentless, chipping away at my physical and mental health. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger, gaunt, hollow-eyed. All seemed truly lost. I was fighting a war I hadn't started, with weapons I didn't possess, against an enemy who knew all my weaknesses. There were days I wanted to give up, to sign whatever papers they put in front of me, just to make it stop. To retreat into the darkness and disappear. The constant fighting, the lies, the public humiliation, it was a relentless assault on my spirit. He wasn't just taking the house, the money, he was trying to steal my sense of self-worth. He wanted to leave me with nothing, bankrupt and broken. And for a time, it felt like he might succeed. The pressure was immense, a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I felt trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The midpoint shift wasn't a sudden flash of insight, but a slow, simmering realization that hardened into ice. I was sitting in my lawyer's office, listening to him explain Mark's latest maneuver, another calculated cruelty designed to hurt me. My lawyer was kind, but the situation felt hopeless. And then something clicked. I looked at the divorce papers, at Mark's signature, so familiar, so alien now. I saw Claire's name mentioned in an exhibit. And I saw them. Not as formidable opponents, but as small, desperate people, hiding behind lawyers and lies. He was the one who had betrayed everything. She was the one who had built her happiness on someone else's ruins. Their strength was a facade, built on deceit. My weakness, my pain was real, yes, but it wasn't my defining characteristic. Anger, pure and cold, began to replace the fear and sorrow. It wasn't a destructive rage, but a quiet, steady flame. I wouldn't be the victim. I wouldn't let them win. Not like this. I would fight back. Not with anger or tears, but with strategy. With quiet strength. I realized that while they were busy fighting dirty, I could be building something new. Something they couldn't touch. The thought settled in my mind, firm and resolute. I looked at my lawyer, a flicker of something new in my eyes. Okay, I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. What's the next step? And how can we make sure he regrets this? The feeling was exhilarating. I wasn't drowning anymore. I was swimming, strokes strong and purposeful, towards a new shore. I started focusing on my own life again, reconnecting with friends I'd pushed away, exploring new interests, taking care of myself, physically and mentally. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding. I was strategically laying the foundation for my future, while they were still focused on dismantling my past. The shift was complete. I had moved from defense to offense, from victim to architect of my own destiny. The rising challenges were no longer about surviving Mark's attacks, but about executing my own plan under immense pressure. Building something new takes time, effort, and quiet determination, especially when you're trying to keep it hidden from the very people who would try to sabotage it. I had met someone. Not in a dramatic, movie-meet-cute kind of way, but through mutual friends slowly, cautiously. David. He was everything Mark wasn't, kind, steady, honest. He knew my situation, knew the mess I was in, and didn't flinch. He offered support, not pity. He saw me, not just the woman going through a brutal divorce. Our relationship grew in the quiet spaces, away from the noise of the legal battles and the whispers. We were discreet. Very discreet. It was a deliberate choice. Part protection, part strategy. Let Mark and Claire believe I was still reeling, still the broken woman they had left behind. Let them underestimate me. Meanwhile, I was working. Not just on the divorce settlement, pushing back strategically, exposing his lies where possible, but working on my future. A new career opportunity presented itself, something I'd always wanted to do, but had never felt brave enough to pursue. I took it. It meant long hours, hard work, but it was fulfilling. It gave me back a sense of purpose, a sense of self outside of the failed marriage. Financially, things were still tight, but I was gaining ground. Slowly. Each small victory in the divorce proceedings, each success at my new job, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The challenges were still immense. The stress of juggling the legal fight, the demands of a new career, the quiet growth of a new relationship, all while maintaining an outward appearance of someone simply getting by. It was a constant performance, a carefully constructed facade. But underneath, the foundation was strengthening. I was learning my own resilience, my own capacity for quiet warfare. The more they pushed, the harder I pushed back, but always calmly, always within the lines, letting their own excesses be their undoing. Their impatience, their arrogance, their certainty that they had already won. These became my greatest allies. The turning point, the final decision to confront fate and orchestrate my own moment of triumph, solidified when the invitation to Sarah's recital arrived. My sister had sent it, a hopeful note attached wishing I could make it, knowing how much Sarah adored me. Mark would be there, of course, with Claire. They would arrive as a couple, broadcasting their new life, expecting me to be absent, or present and miserable. It was the perfect stage. Public, irrefutable. A moment where Mark intended to showcase his victory, and where I could quietly, elegantly, shatter his illusion of control. The thought came to me like a lightning strike, sharp, clear, and terrifyingly exhilarating. I wouldn't just move on, I would make sure he saw me move on. Not just saw it, but was utterly blindsided by it. The idea took root, growing rapidly from a seed of vengeful fantasy into a concrete, viable plan. I discussed it with David. He was hesitant at first, wary of the potential drama, but he understood the deep-seated need for vindication, for reclaiming my narrative. He agreed. We would go. Together. But quietly. We wouldn't make a scene. The scene would be made by others' reactions. My legal team advised caution, but they understood the emotional weight of the moment. The plan was simple. Arrive separately, sit in our assigned seats, which, by some twist of fate, or careful arrangement of ticket requests by my sister, who knew more than she let on, placed us strategically. Let Mark make his move. And then, when the spotlight inevitably found me, reveal my hand. It was a calculated risk. Everything could go wrong. But the potential for reclaiming my dignity, for wiping that smug look off Claire's face and the arrogant confidence off Mark's, was worth the risk. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about closure. About drawing a line in the sand, publicly and unequivocally, between my past and my future. The determination set in, cold and sharp. I would walk into that auditorium, not as the wronged wife, but as the woman who had built a new life, stronger and happier than the one they had destroyed. And now I am here, sitting in the dusty velvet seat, the music swelling, the moment drawing near. Mark shifts again, his arm brushing Claire's. He catches my eye across the aisle. A flicker of surprise, quickly replaced by that familiar arrogance. He probably assumes I'm here alone, putting on a brave face. Let him think that. It's part of the plan. The stage director is finishing his acknowledgments. He thanks the performers, the teachers, the parents. And then he moves to the benefactors. The significant donors. My sister's family, major supporters of the arts program, are always acknowledged. And this year, the acknowledgement takes a slightly different turn. He calls out familiar names, families known in the community. And then he says, "We'd also like to extend a special thank you to Mr. Mark Everett and his partner, Ms. Claire Jenkins, for their generous contribution." My stomach clenches, but my expression remains serene. This is it. His moment. He stands, preening slightly, taking a shallow bow, pulling Claire up with him. They smile, accepting the polite applause. He gestures towards Claire, a possessive hand on her back. He says something to the director, something intended to be heard. The microphone picks it up, amplifying his voice throughout the quiet auditorium. Yes, I'm very proud to introduce Claire, who's not just a generous supporter, but my real partner in every sense of the word. He emphasizes real, his gaze flicking towards me, a triumphant, cruel glint in his eyes. A collective murmur goes through the audience. People turn their heads, looking from him and Claire to me. Some faces show shock, some pity, some morbid curiosity. My face is a mask. I feel 1,000 eyes on me, the air growing impossibly tight. This is the public shaming he wanted. His declaration of victory. My hands are still clasped, but the trembling has stopped. An icy calm has settled over me. I meet his gaze, and for the first time, I don't look away. I offer him a small, polite smile. A smile that holds no warmth, no pain, only acknowledgement. Like I've just confirmed a trivial piece of information. He looks slightly unnerved by my lack of reaction. He expected tears, a gasp, a hasty exit. Not this quiet composure. He turns back to face the front, perhaps to compose himself. The director clears his throat, moving on. The spotlight, which had widened to encompass Mark and Claire, begins to move again. It sweeps across the audience, preparing to settle on the next person to be acknowledged. My sister's face appears briefly in the light. She gives me a subtle, encouraging nod. She knows. And then, the spotlight finds its next target. It lands on me, blindingly bright. The director is speaking again, his voice clear and strong. And we are equally grateful for the immense support from one of our longtime patrons and her family. Please join me in acknowledging Mrs. Elizabeth Reynolds. He pauses, then adds, deliberately, and her husband, Mr. David Reynolds. Mark freezes. Absolutely, completely frozen in place. I see it out of the corner of my eye. His back is still towards me, but his head snaps around, his body rigid. Claire, standing beside him, looks confused, then follows his gaze. Her eyes widen. The audience goes silent. A different kind of silence now. Not anticipation, but shock. My name, my new name, echoes in the quiet space. I stand up, slowly, deliberately. The spotlight is warm on my face. David rises beside me, his hand finding mine, a firm, reassuring presence. He is tall, kind-faced, radiating quiet strength. He is everything Mark isn't. I turn slightly, just enough to face the section where Mark and Claire are sitting. Their faces are a study in disbelief. Mark's mouth is slightly open. The color has drained from his face, leaving it pasty, gray. Claire looks furious. Betrayed, almost. The murmur of the audience erupts into something louder, more chaotic. Whispers, gasps, shocked exclamations. People are turning in their seats, staring openly. The director, perhaps sensing the seismic shift occurring on his stage, quickly adds, Mrs. Reynolds has been a tireless champion for this program, and we are delighted to welcome her husband, Mr. Reynolds, into our community. He starts to applaud, a little uncertainly. David and I turn back towards the front, smiling calmly at the audience, accepting the now slightly bewildered applause. We are a unit. Solid. United. Mark is still frozen. The real partner he so confidently introduced is now standing beside him, forgotten in the shadow of the woman he tried to destroy, standing tall with her actual husband. The look on his face isn't just shock, it's total, utter devastation. He is blindsided. He came here to perform an execution, and instead walked straight into his own public dismantling. He thought he was the one delivering the twist. He had no idea I had written an entirely different ending. He sees the wedding ring on my finger, undeniable proof. He sees David, strong and steady beside me. He sees the quiet confidence in my posture, the lack of pain in my eyes. He sees that I didn't just survive, I flourished. I won. Not by fighting his fight, but by quietly building my own future, brick by solid brick. The spotlight holds us there, bathed in light, while he and Claire stand in the growing darkness of their own making. The silence that followed was perhaps more impactful than any noise. As the director fumbled to introduce the next segment, the energy in the auditorium was electric, thick with unspoken questions and stunned realization. Mark and Claire remained standing for a moment too long, isolated in the sea of murmuring faces, before Mark seemed to remember where he was and sank back into his seat, pulling Claire down with him. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel his gaze, burning into my back. Feel his humiliation radiating across the aisle. David squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of the moment, the culmination of months of quiet planning. We watched Sarah perform, a small, graceful figure under the lights, completely oblivious to the drama that had unfolded just moments before. Her performance was beautiful, a small island of purity in the turbulent sea of adult complications. But even as I watched her, part of my mind was processing the aftershocks. The whispers around us intensified after the performance ended. People approached me cautiously, offering congratulations, their eyes darting towards Mark and Claire. He avoided my gaze entirely. Claire glared, a venomous look that could curdle milk. I smiled politely, introduced David, accepted the well wishes. There was a quiet satisfaction in watching them navigate the social fallout. Mark, usually so confident, looked small and cornered. He tried to engage in conversations, but his voice seemed strained, his usual charm replaced by a forced, brittle politeness. He introduced Claire again, but this time the emphasis was gone, replaced by a hurried, almost apologetic mumble. The power he had wielded moments before had evaporated. He was no longer the triumphant man with his real partner. He was the caught cheat, the husband who had been replaced. Publicly, decisively. The cost of his cruelty was being exacted in real time, not by me, but by the sheer, undeniable reality of my new life, presented on the stage he had chosen for his own moment of glory. We left shortly after, slipping out into the cool night air. The contrast between the stifling tension inside and the crisp air outside was stark. Relief washed over me, mixed with an unexpected wave of sadness. The victory felt complete, yes, but it was a victory born from pain, from the ashes of something I had once believed in. The marriage was over, irrevocably. The public declaration had sealed it, not just for him, but for everyone who witnessed it. There were phone calls later that night, a flurry of texts. Shock, congratulations, questions. Mark didn't call. He wouldn't. There was nothing left to say. He had played his hand, shown his cruelty, and I had responded not with anger, but with quiet power. The plot twist wasn't just that I had moved on. It was that I had moved on so completely, so successfully, that his attempt to wound me only exposed his own weakness. He thought he was humiliating me by introducing his mistress. He never imagined the woman he cast aside would return, not broken, but remarried, standing in the spotlight he craved, with a love that felt immeasurably more real than anything he had ever offered. The lessons learned are etched deep. Trust is a fragile thing, easily shattered. Appearances are deceiving. The most solid-looking facades can hide the deepest rot. And quiet strength, the resolve built in the shadows, can be more powerful than any public display of arrogance. I built this new life not to spite him, but to save myself. The recital was just the moment I chose to reveal it. It wasn't the end of the story, but a definitive closing of a painful chapter. The future stretches ahead, uncertain, but filled with possibility. I walk towards it, not looking back at the wreckage, but focused on the horizon, hand in hand with the man who sees my strength, not my scars. The air outside the auditorium smells clean, promising. It's a different kind of atmosphere than the one inside, one I can finally breathe in freely. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to face down a difficult past to build a brighter future, I'd love to hear your version, or just know that you were here for this moment. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. And if you feel moved to, subscribing helps bring more of these stories, more moments of finding quiet triumph to life. Thanks for being here.